tear gas to try and disperse the crowds. The altercations became violent and escalated into broader dissent.
It was interesting how the mainstream newspapers replied to that.
We're really expecting even more uglier scenes than we've seen over the last 3 days.
No, because we've had dozens and dozens of these situations, at least over the last 15 years or longer.
And that's the way that we start things off. I'm Darin Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
And I'm Kendra Cooper.
It's so good to be around here today because we're talking about the way the revolution of consciousness is occurring and the way the globe is waking up from its deep capitalistic slumber.
Yes, people are tired of being oppressed and put down and austerized to death.
The word of the day, austerized. Coming up, let's run a clip and let's get right into it. It's Turkey.
Tear gas, rubber bullets, and water cannons. That's the scene in Turkey as protests have erupted across the country, resulting in violent clashes between police and citizens. The protest started in Istanbul's Gezi Park as Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan refused to answer calls against destroying the park. Plans were to replace it with a large shopping mall. The protest lasted 4 days, but after police used tear gas to try and disperse the crowds, the altercations became violent and escalated into broader dissent against the Islamist government. Amnesty International called for Turkish authorities to put an end to the police violence and open an investigation into the hundreds injured in police interventions throughout the country. A CNN report from a Turkish citizen made startling accusations of police abuse, saying, quote, police are packing people into the subway stations and throwing in tear gas, attacking hospitals where the injured are being treated. People from all ages and races, all political viewpoints are coming together to fight. Websites have sprung up scheduling more protests across the country. The hashtag Occupy Turkey has started trending on Twitter with a banner calling for a revolution against the government. Social media has been the primary tool for the protests to come to light. The Guardian reports Turkey's government has been relying on state-run media to downplay the unfolding violence in the country. Erdogan has been prime minister since 2002, and his regime has been criticized as increasingly authoritarian. Just last week, the parliament voted to ban alcohol sale and consumption between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Erdogan has tried to push for Turkey's emergence as a major power, but has met resistance from citizens, saying the prime minister is trying to, quote, impose an Islamist state. Construction on the park has been temporarily suspended. For Newsy, I'm Zach Toon.
Yes, and Robert just informed me that apparently he has fled the country.
No, he hasn't fled the country. It was a scheduled meeting.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, he didn't flee.
I don't know.
Yeah. Suddenly scheduled?
Suddenly scheduled?
Well,
Yes.
apparently it's been scheduled for some time. But what's interesting about that is the person who was going to develop the park was his son-in-law.
Yeah, it's sort of like Mayor Walter Gray approving the towers downtown in Kelowna, BC. His son's benefiting from that too.
Yeah.
We're here to talk about the conscious revolution and to celebrate the fact that you are wide awake. We're here as part of your support structure, so stay tuned while we start talking about major activism around the planet. Let's run this. What is it?
This is him telling the people that these people are extremists and anarchists, and yet they're cleaning up their mess.
Okay, let's do it.
The Prime Minister has just flown out of this city, embarking on a long-scheduled foreign trip. At the airport, he said everybody should be calm, relax, don't be misled by extremist elements. Now, this is a theme that he's been touching on all weekend. He's been accusing the protesters of being extremists, marginals, or even anarchists. It was interesting how the mainstream newspapers replied to that today. I'm going to show you one photograph which is featured on the front pages of 3 big newspapers. Look at this picture here. You see demonstrators clearing up the park. And the headline there, Temiz Toplum, means clean society. You see the same picture here of people cleaning up the park. And again, cleaning up the park and cleaning up the street. This is a bus that was vandalized by anarchists. And the other protesters who didn't attack the bus are cleaning up the glass. And what the newspapers are basically saying is, hey, extremists don't clear up the litter, these protesters cannot be dismissed as extremists.
And you know, that was one of our major themes in Occupy when we were occupying in downtown Kelowna.
Yeah.
We're cleaning up all the time.
Oh,
We
yeah.
even cleaned up cigarette butts.
Well, I just want to say one thing,
Yeah.
obviously. From my observations of anarchism and anarchists, I would say that anarchists would clean up a park.
They would.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay,
For
they
sure.
would sweep up, from the front of Starbucks when they get rid of that corporate
Yeah,
nightmare.
we'll clean the glass. I'm
But
just-
that's one of the things that, not that we're suggesting.
no, no.
If you're going to
I'm
have a
just saying-
revolution, you may as well be tidy.
Yes,
Well,
a tidy,
and
clean revolution.
They'll
the same
take
thing.
care of it.
Yeah, in Tahrir
People
Square.
will take care of it. We don't need authorities to take care of it. The people will take care of it.
And they do it naturally. They do it themselves. The general public is not lazy. It's not uneducated, and it is certainly not uninformed. And more than capable. We saw it in Tahrir Square, where they delivered groceries and they carted garbage out because the garbage men wouldn't come into Tahrir
Yeah.
Square in Egypt. So they said, "Oh, okay, well that's fine." And they had
Yeah.
guys wandering around cleaning up, and they would clean up anything that got broken.
Well, Occupy Sandy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah, there you go. There's another one.
Yeah.
Okay.
They
So,
stepped up when the government was still fumbling about.
well, isn't that what we always do?
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. The government drops the ball all the time. We've seen this all over the place. Did you want to run this?
Yeah,
okay,
this
what
is
do you got?
this is how brutal the police are acting towards the protesters.
Okay, so what you're not going to get in major media, that's what we're bringing you. So check this out.
I'm standing now looking over Taksim Square, which has been the scene of protests for the last 7 days, which began in Gezi Park. And any hopes really by the government that this would have been over on Monday, the day that everybody goes back to work and their normal life, has definitely proven not to be the case. Just in the last hour, there was a barrage of tear gas about half a kilometre, if not a kilometre away from here, and there was so much tear gas used that it flooded the square, and people are still recovering from the effects of that. And in Besiktas itself, there's still ongoing clashes between protesters and police. Besiktas is, of course, where Dolmabahce Palace is, where the offices of the Prime Minister Erdogan are located. And the police have released a statement saying that tonight will be the night that they finish the protests in Besiktas. So we're really expecting even more uglier scenes than we've seen over the last 3 days. And of course, there's also been the statement earlier today by one of the trade unions here, which has 250,000 members, that they are going to go on strike tomorrow and the day after in protest at what they say is a government crackdown on peaceful protests here across Turkey, in cities across Turkey.
And exactly like in Tunisia and Egypt, it's the police acting like the police who caused the government to lose credibility and be overthrown.
Making it violent. I
Yes.
mean, all this is democratic. What do you think it is, besides the police being there?
When thousands of people show up in the street saying you're going in the wrong direction, and then you say, oh, well, they're defeating the democratic process. No, I'm not sure about that.
And some people say this is being engineered as part of the Arab Spring. No, this is more engineered on, get out, you're fired.
Yeah.
However, the one thing that they're not talking about that we're following quite extensively is the fact that kissing in public was made illegal in Turkey. And this is one of the things that's coming up out of the streets of Turkey. So the way they're protesting, at the end of the night, they kiss goodnight in public.
Yeah.
Now, there was a couple that was beaten, and then they followed the cops back to the cop shop and made a whole thing there because they were kissing goodnight at the end of the night. They weren't even protesters.
Wow. Yeah, that
that
now
was
really
that's
hard
messed
to
up.
watch. Yeah.
Okay, and these poor guys, like the one in that we ran from last week, the activists who were corralled into a subway station.
Yeah.
You're a democracy, really? You're a civilization, and that's the way you do this?
But people aren't being scared. I mean, the amount of solidarity is amazing.
I know, and I'm loving it. It's happening all over the world. What do you got?
Well, we got the people in Cambodia standing up to a major multinational.
Check it out.
Now, police in Cambodia have used stun batons on garment workers protesting for better wages. At least 23 were wounded. Around 3,000 staff, mostly women, blocked a road outside the factory, which makes clothes for sportswear giant Nike. With more analysis now on the story, we're joined live by Richard Wolff, economist and author of Democracy at Work, A Cure for Capitalism. Now, a Nike spokeswoman in the United States said the company was concerned about the allegations and was investigating. So can we expect any real action?
No, because we've had dozens and dozens of these situations, at least over the last 15 years or longer, in many Asian countries. They are always responded to by shock and surprise on the part of the employer that no one in the United States believes, and then a promise to investigate, which no one in the United States takes seriously, and which almost inevitably has little or no consequence, as we can see by the endless repetition of these sorts of incidents.
If this is the case, then, I mean, who is responsible for providing these decent working conditions at such factories? Is it the clothing giants or the factory owners?
Well, in a sense, the responsibility is everyone's. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand this. The problem is nothing has ever changed in that story unless and until the workers push back. And usually when they push back and make demands, the government is in the pockets of the businesses, and so the lines are drawn, and we're simply seeing in Cambodia the same sad replay.
OK, we'll have to leave it there. Richard Wolff, thanks very much indeed for joining us here on RT today.
The most interesting statement there being nobody believes they're going to do anything about it.
And we're all responsible.
Yeah, I mean, you often hear, oh, well, they like those jobs. They like those factories. And, like, I don't doubt that they want a living wage and they want to make a living. But, I mean, they're not dumb. They know they're being exploited.
This is happening everywhere, like in Kelowna right now. You got a minimum wage job, and then you've got this poverty employer.
Yeah.
Well, I'm providing jobs.
Yeah.
No, you're providing poverty.
Yeah.
McDonald's, Burger King, all taking money out of the community and providing poverty for its employers. But, you know, we got to...
Exactly.
But they're making a profit.
Yeah, so they're good. Let's run one more on Cambodia.
It started as a standoff between workers, between those on strike and those who had come to work. Police had to build barriers to separate the two sides when the rows of riot officers couldn't contain the crowds. Witnesses say that around 4,000 striking workers had attacked the factory before being confronted by their colleagues who decided to work on. It took more than 1,000 riot police to try to disperse the crowds. 11 policemen and 8 workers were injured during the unrest. The workers here are angry. They want to see their monthly wage increase by $14 a month, and they've been on strike for almost 2 weeks to put pressure on the factory owners. The largely female workforce makes sportswear for the US company Nike, but their union claims they're making less than Cambodia's legal minimum wage. This strike comes at a time when pay and conditions in Cambodia's clothing industry have come under the spotlight. Last month, the ceiling of a Cambodian factory collapsed, killing 2 people and injuring 7 more. And last week, Nike expressed concern that police had allegedly used stun batons to disperse striking workers from this factory. The Cambodian government will be watching what happens here closely. The garment industry is the country's biggest employer and key export earner, but workers are becoming increasingly unhappy about the low pay they receive for their efforts. Julie Peacock, BBC News.
Man, we've got so much. We've got to take a quick break, yes?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're going to come right back with more information on activism around the world. And remember, if you're watching mainstream media, you are not being informed because you didn't know the fact that Nike was disputing a $14 a month raise.
Oh, my God.
It's offensive at best, but it's Radio Free Canada, and we're here for you because you're awake. Thanks for joining us. I'm Darin Howard.
I'm Robert Nisbet.
And I'm Kendra Cooper.
Stay tuned. We're going to be right back with more activism around the planet.